afraid of my hatred for men. It started as a fun little, you know those TikToks where people are like, don't make jokes about having kinks because your brain doesn't know you're joking, and it actually develops them. I think I joked way too much about hating men, and now I am genuinely, in a sexist way, I hate them. Like, in a way that a white man from Alabama hates black people, I hate men. I walk past them and I want to kill them. And they aren't even doing anything. I just see them and it fills me with rage. I don't know how to stop. It's gone way too far. It consumes...
Hey tribe, how y'all doing? Welcome to another episode of Soul Chat Saturdays. It's your host MYWYA, and thank you so much for tuning in. So I know that I'm gonna catch a lot of flack for this topic, but hey, I'm your spiritual theorizer, and we have to get into the phenomenons, the trends of society, especially if we want to kind of break some of these insanity loops, if we want to see ourselves clearly as an individual and as a greater species. So I want to talk about the overcorrection. So what I mean by the overcorrection is the pendulum swing. It is the response to things as a society. You do this in your own individual life, but as a society, it is our response to having experienced certain things for a long period of time. So what do I mean by that? For example, there is an overcorrection when it comes to gender equality. And that's why some people are really against the feminist movement. That's why feminism, as it is the traditional feminism that we have deemed or come to criticize, rather, has even formed. It was an overcorrection of misogyny, of toxic masculinity. I know that people don't like that word, but for the lack of other vocabulary as we evolve, toxic masculinity, which was also an overcorrection in itself. But that's history, and I don't have the stats on that. But we could tell that feminism was an overcorrection from what women experienced, or white women experienced, in the 50s, the 60s, 40s, and now what we have today. Another overcorrection. This is going to be triggering, but when we talk about race relations and the extremes that we are in today's time when it comes to race relationships and how we talk about race and the things that we expect from each other when we are of differing races. So, for example, Black folks, I'm gonna get chewed up for this, but we gotta dig into it, right? When we call, for example, when the community calls, I'll say this, the community calls white people, just mean names like mayonnaise, or I don't know what else. I'm not gonna go through a whole list of names, but when we start to bully the other race, basically, it's an overcorrection. So another example would be gender. These big hot topics that we talk about in society now and that we are so polarized on, these are overcorrections. So let's get into it. What is going on? What is actually happening? So a lot of times right now, people are criticizing the overcorrection. People are, they're being completely turned off from certain conversations because it's tiring. Let's take the gender example. It's a very tiring subject when us women are constantly saying how we are oppressed and we are, we are held down, we're held back. They talk about the pay gap and things like that. So these are not to say, when I talk about this video, this is not to say that those things don't exist. I'm not going to invalidate that because, again, overcorrections come out of, it's a response to reality. And so when we have an overcorrection, it is basically just saying, like, I'm tired of experiencing this one extreme form of this thing, and I need to experience the other, like, right now. And that's where you have the extreme pendulum swing to the other side. So when we're talking about gender, now you have, well, women can do everything that a man can do. And then it gets even more toxic because then it's like, I'll say it gets toxic when it's like, and we don't need men. And what purpose do they serve? And then it turns into this whole bullying thing. And then it goes into, well, you're a man, so you can't have an opinion on this. It turns into it flips it on its head. And when we get into that space, we have to first understand why that is and hold some space of compassion, right? We have to hold some space of compassion. We have to see that it is trauma induced. It is pain induced. It is a defense mechanism. Just like how you in your individual life may go to the extreme of, say you dated people and then you're like, you got your heart broken and you're like, I'm swearing off all people. I'm not dating anymore. I'm done. You are overcorrecting. You are flipping it on its head. And it's something that you don't want. Because if you wanted it, you wouldn't have been dating in the first place, right? If women wanted to be alone by themselves without men, then first of all, the cosmos, the universe, the creator would have not put men on the planet. And it wouldn't take a man, or at least the sperm of a man, to produce children. It wouldn't, there wouldn't be a phenomenon that men think differently than women, that we are different and that we have strengths, different strengths. So those wouldn't be if the overcorrection was an absolute truth. So we have to understand where the overcorrection comes from and hold compassion for that. And now we need to, after we hold compassion, we have understanding, like, I get it, like, you've been hurt, or your grandparents told you stories about, your grandmother told you stories about when she was, beat on by her husband, not allowed to leave the house, not allowed to look at her husband in the eye. We know how these stories go from the 50s, when it was more prevalent that men beat on their wives, their women. Even the language changes, right? Beat on their wives, their significant other, and it was something that people didn't talk about. It was something that you just knew, but you didn't talk about it. And it was pretty normal. And so, so now that we can hold compassion in space and understanding that this is a trauma response, this is a pain response, and try to have some understanding of that. Then you go into, okay, now let's talk about the actual effects of this. Let's talk about how we become the perpetuators of the same thing that we were victims of. So when it comes to gender, women now bullying men and saying things like, your opinion is not valid because you are a man. You have no value because you're a man and I'm a woman and I can do everything, including bring life into this world. Things like that. You still have the reality that men exist. the only thing that you're doing is creating more toxicity. And the pendulum is going to swing again to the other side. You're creating a momentum that's going to force the pendulum to swing to the other side, because this side doesn't feel good either. Women who are high, and there's outliers, right? So there's women who are highly independent that really are not about the opposite sex, whether it be friendships or romantic relationships. So that includes women who identify as lesbian and women who identify as straight and anything in between. And so when you have that type of person, they are not necessarily happy with where they are, because there are certain things that men do well that women don't do well. And we find ourselves having to overcompensate. And I know that Black women specifically have felt the extremities of the feminism movement and realized feminism was not for us. It was not the response that we needed for our community, because Black women and white women were treated differently. Their womanhood was treated differently in the context of American society, right? And so that was weird. Black women were the first to realize that feminism, besides men, because of course men are going to see they're going to be a little bit more objective of it. Black women saw it early on that, this is not helpful for me. I don't want to be this independent woman. I want to be a woman. I want to be soft. I want to fulfill the womanly part of things. And so you see the swinging or the movement even within a group of people. And so it's inevitably going to swing back to, hopefully more so towards the middle. It will never be as extreme as it was. We won't have a male-dominated society anymore, not in the upcoming future, because we've already experienced that. And because we've already experienced that, and we know that men have their own thoughts and opinions on masculinity and the pressure that has put on them to not be their authentic self. So it won't go into the extreme side anymore. Everybody's gotten a taste of it, and everybody was like, no, or most people were like, no, we don't like this. And now we're swinging to the opposite side, and the same thing's happening. We're getting a taste of it, and a lot of us are going to be like, no, this doesn't feel 100% good either. So where do we go from here? So the pendulum eventually will settle in the middle. It will find balance. I don't know how long that would take. That just it's like a wave in water, and it just depends on how much energy, how much turmoil, how much force has caused it to move. And so this is what's happening in society. We're seeing a lot of the pendulum swings. When we have these extreme differing of opinions, even though we are all human beings at our core, wanting very similar fundamental things in our lives, when we have that, it is just a way to understand us more clearly, right? And society is not, or humans are not meant to be in extremity. We are in you can look at the earth too. We are meant to be in equilibrium. We are meant to be in stasis. And so we will get there. I'm not worried about that. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we will get there because we want to feel good. That's our baseline. And we will stop coping with things outside of ourselves once we realize that everything is internal. And so now that I've kind of explained, why the pendulum swings in the first place, and I'm explaining why it doesn't feel good, we will see, and then I'm explaining that it will come back to the middle eventually. I want to kind of give y'all some hope that all is not lost. It may be lost in our lifetime, but all is not lost for the human species, because stasis is where it's at. And yeah, I just wanted to come on here and explain that and talk about this. So what do you all think about this pendulum swing? What is some of the extremes that you've seen in society that that is concerning to you? What is it, and how can we dive into that? How can we first have compassion and understanding, and then how can we have a dialogue about it and really see that does this feel good to us? Like, let's really ask ourselves that, so that we can get out of this cycle of extreme swings, and then eventually, so we don't have to experience that all the time. I'm ready to rest, right? I know y'all are ready to be at rest. So, let me know what y'all think about this. What are y'all thoughts on the pendulum swing, the overcorrections in society, and how have you seen that in your own personal life? Whether it be in your romantic relationships, or whether it be in your friendships, or within yourself, and as you explore your own identity. What are some ways that you've gone to the extreme in side of things, only to realize that didn't feel good either? And then how did you get back to the middle? Because your process on balancing yourself is going to be the same process that we need on a grand scale of things. So let me know. You can always email me at tribe@MYWYAtribe.com. If you want to ask a question, if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on social media platforms at MYWYA Tribe. Let me know your questions. Let me know your thoughts. If you're listening to this on the podcast, go ahead and give it a 5-star rating. Give it a thumbs up, or however you're able to rate the podcast. That way I'm able to reach more people. We can have more dialogue about this. We can just bring these type of conversations to the surface. So we can, we can change some things. We can do some things as a society. So, all right, y'all. I will talk to y'all next week. Happy journey.